Hello, welcome back to today's Q&A live for December 8th. I am your host, David Michalek, and every week at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we all come together live on Facebook and YouTube to talk about credit. And as a consumer credit expert with nearly a decade of experience, I've conducted over 10,000, almost at 100,000, 10,000 one-on-one credit coaching sessions to help people repair their credit and improve their credit score. Looking forward to helping you do the same. And during today's call, I'll be answering all your questions about credit reports, scores, the dispute process, and of course, Credit Versio. So please take a second, introduce yourself. If this is your first live, welcome. I'm glad to have you here today. Got a lot of viewers. Normally, we don't start off with 20, 25 people, but I'm glad you're here today. So please introduce yourself if you haven't. And today, I'm going to start off by talking about dispute letters. It's one of the things that I get questions about the most from thousands and thousands of people who are actively using Credit Versio. Montswell, welcome back. Good to see you. And as I'm talking about dispute letters and strategies, what to do, what not to do, the question really is when you're creating a dispute letter, what makes a good dispute letter? What should you say? Are there things you should do and not do in your dispute letter? Now, it turns out there are certain things the bureaus prefer that you do and don't do. Now, we know this because we have partners / good friends who used to work in the dispute resolution divisions of both Transunion and Equifax. So we actually know quite a bit about what goes on behind the scenes when the credit bureaus receive your dispute letter. So welcome, John. Good to see you. And because of that, Credit Versio's letter format, the language that is in the Credit Versio letter, was not only built around what we have learned collectively as credit experts who have done millions and millions of disputes over a decade now, for over 100,000 clients. That doesn't even include Credit Versio. Add another, maybe 75, 80, 100,000 clients there. So we've gotten some great insight from our friends who work inside the credit bureaus to let us know, like, hey, this is some stuff to do. These are some things not to do. And so what I want to do is I'm going to jump into Credit Versio real quickly. Now, if you've already got a Credit Versio account, some of this is going to be old hat to you. But I want to go through and explain why Credit Versio does some of the things that it does and what's really going on in the background when you're creating a dispute letter. So it turns out dispute letters are far less complicated, or they don't need to be as complicated as people make them out to be. And this is really one of my objections myself. If you've been on here before, you've seen me on with John Olsheimer, who used to work for both FICO and Equifax. And one of the things we spend a great deal of time talking about is all the misinformation that is out there. The idea that people sell dispute templates is, I know it happens, but it's kind of comical because a lot of what's in these letters is completely unnecessary. So let me show you what the process looks like when you do this for collectively probably about 17 years, 18 years, for hundreds of thousands of clients, millions of disputes, and you get to learn what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so let's jump into Credit Versio. And this is the first time I've ever done a demo with Credit Versio on a live. So let's keep our fingers crossed it goes real well. Apologize last week. I know that we had some internet problems for the whole building here. So I think I was on for about 28 minutes and the whole thing just collapsed. So fingers crossed we'll do a little bit better today. Okay, so I'm in Credit Versio. Now what's happened at this point, when you see credit scores, when you see down here, you can see my cursor, hopefully, going around the Create Dispute Letter Action button. So what happens is Credit Versio has connected with my 3-bureau credit report provider, and it's brought in my credit report. And before it does that, it goes through an entire scanning process. There are literally thousands and thousands of lines of code that make up a credit report. What makes Credit Versio so much better than an individual, and this is coming from a guy who spent 7.5 years looking at credit reports. all day long, talking to people and looking at them side by side and trying to find the differences between the two, between accounts, to see if there were errors and mistakes, violations, anything that could give me some ammunition for a dispute. And I had an entire team of 20, 25 people that's all they did all day long was scan credit reports. Well, the amazing thing about Credit Versio, it's the first software ever created that can actually do a better job than people. We're not all that great at looking at PDF files side by side that might be 30, 40 pages long of credit reports where, last month's and this month's might not line up right. Accounts kind of move around, especially if you've got some things deleted. So it's really, really hard to do. That's why Credit Versio doesn't look at PDFs. It looks at code. It actually receives a digital credit report from whoever it's partnered with. So makes it far better at the process of doing an evaluation of the credit report. So the first thing we're going to do here is let's create dispute letter. I just want to get right into it. So I click dispute letter, and I'm starting off with Transunion. As you probably know, the three bureaus are different companies. They can have different information. There is no law that says a creditor has to report to all three. They might not report at all. They might report to one, two, or they might report to all three. So they get to make that decision. The only thing they really have to comply with is the consumer protection laws if they decide to report. Okay, so that's why we're going to do these one at a time. I'm only going to do Transunion. We're not going to be on here for a long, long time. I just want to give you a breakdown of what is a good dispute letter. And one of the first things I want to tell people is, number one, it's got to be simple. Simple to the point. You don't have to cite laws. In fact, I'll give you a little reference point, and then I'll get into creating some disputes here. And years ago, one of the things that I used to do with my team at the credit repair company that I was with before Credit Versio, I was the VP of probably one of the most expensive high-end white glove credit repair companies in the country. And because of our exposure, we had a lot of athletes, if you've watched the tutorial videos, you've heard me tell this story. We had a lot of athletes. I can't tell you how many NFL players I've talked to, NBA players I've talked to, their handlers, very, very wealthy people, people in the public spotlight who had really bad credit. And because of our exposure, both on TV, radio, that built a lot of trust and people called us. And one of the things that we did as a white glove service is we had these long dispute letters that cited the law. And if you don't do this, I'm going to report you to the attorney, or I'm going to file a complaint, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's pretty much what a lot of credit repair companies still do now. Turns out that that's actually really a bad idea. And I never knew this because I had never met anybody who worked at a credit bureau. Most people who work in the credit repair space have never met anybody from the industry. They just learn from somebody who teaches credit repair, from somebody who taught them, from somebody who taught them. But fortunately, we were big enough to where we got a chance to sit down with a guy that, it turns out, used to run the entire dispute division for Transunion. And we had a great conversation, and we explained what we do, and maybe tried to get a little bit of information from him. And he was very forthcoming. He said, listen, you guys are clowns. First of all, you don't need to cite the laws. We know what the laws are. Everything that we do operationally is based off of consumer protection laws. You don't need to threaten us. We're not afraid of you. You don't need to tell us you're going to sue us. We're not afraid. Just tell us what the dispute is. Because a long time, what I believed and what a lot of credit repair people perpetuate, and what a lot of consumers believe, is that, well, the bureaus aren't on my side. They're out to make sure that bad stuff stays on. And that's actually not the case at all. The credit bureaus are just middlemen. They're just repositories of data. That's all they do. All they do is hold your information in a digital cloud in the sky, and about 15,000 data furnishers, that's what we call creditors, anybody who furnishes information to the bureaus, they just store it. They really want the information to be correct. And in order to do that, and I'd had conversations with processors who worked in the bureaus. These are the ones that would, when a letter gets escalated to somebody that's got to read it. I've talked to those people before, and they have real input on what they like to see. If you want to get at least favorable treatment, I'm not saying a favorable result. Your result is going to be based on the data furnisher. If you're nice, it doesn't mean that something that's accurate is going to get deleted. It doesn't work that way. But you might get an extra step, some extra consideration if you're nice and polite and to the point. Okay, shocking stuff, right? I mean, act right, act nice, be polite, ask for what you want, and wow, guess what? Somebody might give it to you. So let's jump back into Credit Versio, and I want to paint a picture for you. Okay, so how does this work? So here we are in the Transunion dispute right here. Okay, so here are the 12 accounts that that Credit Versio found. And let's open one up real quick. So you see to the right, it says suggested all the way down. Well, one of the beautiful things that Credit Versio does when it scans a credit report is looking for errors. It can find 20 different kinds of errors. I'd be lucky personally if I sat down and looked at a credit report for a while, maybe I could be able to find about 8 or 9 or 10. Okay, my team altogether back in the, before Credit Versio, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11. So Credit Versio can find 20. It's going to pick up on even the most minute little things. Okay, so let's take a look here. So here's a Macy's card. And if we look down at the bottom, here's the late payment error right here. So I found an error. Anytime you see the word error, it means that probably something's wrong with this account. So I'll read the language. And by the way, I want to really point this out so this grabs your attention. This is it. This language that I'm going to show you right here is it. There's no magic to it. It says this account is incorrectly reporting that I have 4 late payments. Okay, so here it is, 30 days times 4. That's what that means right there. It's been 30 days late 4 times. On my Experian report, there are 2 late payments being reported. Okay, so we're looking at Transunion right now. Here we are at the top. But Credit Versio compared this Transunion credit report to the credit report, to the Experian credit report, and found a discrepancy. That's a problem. Okay, bureaus should agree with each other, at least if we're talking about derogatory information. So there's your dispute right there. Okay, so I'm going to click this. I'm not going to click all these. We're not going to take a ton of time doing this. Well, what about the next one? Now, let's just scroll down a little bit. Okay, auto loan, cap 1. Okay, here's one. This one I like. Now, notice it doesn't say error right here. That's because, as far as Credit Versio is concerned, materially on the credit report, there's not an error. Now, this doesn't mean that there might not be something wrong with the account. Maybe you have a backstory. Maybe you weren't late on this, or I'm not you specifically, but you know what I mean. So maybe there's a story that explains why this is marked incorrectly. Well, Credit Versio doesn't know what your personal story is or my personal story is. It's just looking for errors on the credit report. And if it doesn't find one, it's going to go into a default position. Here's what I mean. Credit Versio knows that this is an auto loan. It knows that it's Capital One. It knows that it's done probably thousands, if not tens of thousands of disputes with this kind of an account. It knows what the probability is of deletion based on the type of dispute reason you give. So what Credit Versio is doing right now is going to say, okay, Capital One auto loan late payments. Okay, let's look into the database of all the millions of disputes that we record. Well, what's the highest probability for success? Okay, well, it's this dispute reason. That's what it's pulled out. And it sounds pretty common sense. Okay, I don't remember ever being late with a payment on this account. Please provide statements and records of all payments made and missed since I opened this account. Okay, it's not an unreasonable request to make. Well, what can happen here? Well, the data furnisher, in this case, it's Capital One, but it could be any data furnisher, might just say, yeah, it's just easier to remove the late payments and move on. We don't know if we have that information. Okay, so to be honest with you, there's 4 reasons why accounts typically get deleted. This is under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Okay, erroneous, outdated, incomplete, unverifiable. Okay, unverifiable is the one that normally causes a deletion. There's a big difference between what's accurate and what is provable. Okay, so moving on, I'll scroll down here a little ways, and here's an account that comes up pretty frequently, a little bit more frequently than you'd guess, which is a duplicate account. So here's a North Island Credit Union MasterCard account, duplicate. So this account is being reported on my credit report multiple times with the same account number and open date. Okay, well, where is that one? It's right here. It's actually being reported twice. You got, instead of having Now, whoops, wrong one. Let's go up here again. Rather than having one charge off, now we got two of them. Okay, that could create some damage on the credit report. All right, let's scroll down a little bit so you get the idea. Let's go down to a collection here. All right, let's go down one more. Okay, so here is a collection that doesn't have an error that Credit Versio can see. So it's going to operate off of how the FDCPA works. That's the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. It's going to request that they prove that they have the legal right to collect the debt. So under the FDCPA, a collection company, a third-party collector, has to prove that they have a legal right to collect. So there's some things they have to provide. This is standard practice. You'd be surprised how many times collections get deleted when you ask them this question. Okay, it's one of those things where a lot of collection companies buy debt on spreadsheets. They don't have the information that they're supposed to have, and you send them this kind of a dispute, a lot of times you can get a deletion. Depends on what kind of information that they've got. All right, so that's all I'm going to select for accounts. So you see this little collapse button right here. So I'm all done with my accounts. Next stage would be public records. So there's no bankruptcy on this credit report. Used to be that public records also included tax liens and judgments, but that disappeared in June, I believe, of 17 or 18 with the passing of what was called NCAP. That's the National Consumer Assistance Program, where they wiped out public tax liens and judgments from public records. Okay, a little bit of information that you probably didn't need to know, but it's interesting nonetheless. Okay, here I want to point out that we can see that there are disputes that are all on the same day. So 10/16, 10/16, 10/16. Okay, now it says, if I open this up, says that it's a multiple inquiry error, but it's not really an error. There's no FCRA violation about multiple inquiries on the same day. In fact, both VantageScore and FICO account for multiple inquiries in one day so that it only affects you as one inquiry. So if you want more information on that, you can go into everything you need to know about inquiries at creditversio.com in the credit education section. We have a great video on it that John Alzheimer did. So let me do this. Let me click a few of these. Okay, so now I'm done. Let me close this up. So you can see here at the top, let me get back to the screen here. Okay, so what I've done, just to recap, I've clicked 3 of these. Okay, and now I've got 7 items. So what is that? 4 on here, and then 3 inquiries. I'm going to hit the next button. I want to show you this. This is really important. We get a lot of questions about this. So Credit Versio is going to give you an inquiry dispute warning. It says disputing the inquiry of a recently opened account can result in the creditor closing your account. So if you just opened now this happens mostly with like lines of credit and credit cards, not necessarily with car loans or physically something that's collateralized like a home or a car or a boat. So when I see that, I'm like, oh boy, okay, well, let's just say that I got a Visa card through, I got some kind of a loan through Wells Fargo. Yeah, I don't want them to close it, so let's take that one off because they're the ones that approved me. And I'll go ahead and dispute these 2 down here because it was on the same day and I didn't get approved by these guys. Even though it doesn't really have an effect on my credit score, I mean, cosmetically, inquiries are there. Inquiries are one of those things that people freak out about a lot, and they shouldn't because they really have very little impact on score. The only time they really ever become a problem is when you're trying to get a business loan. But apart from that, they're pretty benign. Okay, so back to Credit Versio here. Great. So now I've got 6 items selected. I'm going to hit next. We already read that. I'm going to hit continue. Okay, now I'm in the area where I'm going to choose a dispute reason. So let's start off with Macy's. I'll open that up, and it'll give me the particulars just as a refresher. It's letting me know that this is a credit card from Macy's. I got 4 late payments. If I scroll down, here's the dispute reason, late payments. Late payment error is the suggested reason. Now, do I have to go with it? No. I mean, like I said a second ago, if there's a backstory, if there's something about this account where I know for sure I wasn't late on it, I've got documentation in hand, or I've got something to explain that it is not late, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to change it here. I'll do a drop down and I'll write a custom reason. So you're not pigeonholed into accepting what Credit Versio gives you. You can do really whatever you want. But a lot of people just follow the suggested reason because, frankly, they understand that the software is a lot better at finding these things than people are. All right, so I'm going to save this one. Let me go down here to Cap 1 Auto. Okay, here's the I don't remember being late. So this is a generic dispute that Credit Versio selected because it understands that this is an auto loan. Well, what's the highest probability of success against late payments on an auto loan? And it's going to be this dispute reason right here. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to let Credit Versio do the work for me. Okay, and here's my duplicate right here. Okay, duplicate collector error. So it's just giving me a little recap of what it's going to say. Now, this isn't the whole dispute. We're going to get to that in a second. Credit Versio is going to add some information in it. All right, and then let me just finish up real quickly. I'll click these, we'll scroll down a little bit, got my inquiries. You'll see here multiple inquiries error. Number 1, this changes as you go through the dispute rounds. So I'll save that. And then last one here. Okay, let's wrap it up. Okay, great. So I'm all done. Now, do I need to go back and edit anything? Am I satisfied with this? Notice how little time this took me to do. Rather than having to download templates somewhere, write my own, or go off the reservation and tell a whole long story that I don't need to tell, the work is done for me. I'm going to hit finish, and what's going to happen is Credit Versio is going to email the dispute letter to me with my IDs attached. One of the things that everybody's got to do, let me go back to the home page real quick here. One thing that you want to do, first thing, this is why you really want to go in here and watch these tutorial videos, is tutorial video 1 and 2 talk about setting up your account correctly. You want to make sure that you add your ID. You can do that here. This is a staging area. We're not actually looking at somebody's credit report. These are accounts that came from somebody's credit report. Of course, we changed the data around a little bit so it's not exposing anything private or personal, but this is a staging area that I use to do my demos. So here we want to add a photo ID, driver's license, passport, state ID card, proof of address. We want to add that too. Best kind of proof of address is utility. Proof of address has got to be recent, within the last, I would say, no later than 60 days. So, and once you do that, before you create your disputes like I just did, Credit Versio will attach those ID documents to your dispute letter, and you want to send those in with the bureau. Last thing that you want is to send in a dispute letter, and I've seen this happen countless times. If you've moved recently, the bureaus don't have your newer address on file because it's just you didn't apply for any credit, or your job information hasn't updated. There's nothing that's updated your address. They won't return your dispute though, but they'll send you a letter saying, hey, David, we don't know who you are. We don't have any information. We don't have any address on file. Now, keep in mind, their response to you is going to be some sensitive information, so that they want to make sure that they're sending it to the right place. So make sure that you have your IDs in your Credit Versio account, or if you're not using Credit Versio, make sure you still put your IDs, black and white copies are fine, in your dispute letter. All right, so let's go back to Credit Versio. Okay, now if I go back to the home page, now I've got an update. You can see here it says letter created. Now, again, this is a staging area that I have October dates, but it'll let me know. Let's just imagine today is the 1st of October. Now it's letting me know I got to send the letter out by October 8th. Well, let's take a look at this letter. That's what I was getting to. This is what we're talking about here. What does a proper dispute letter look like? So what I can do is hit preview. And so here you'll see it's got my name and address. Here I can put in my date of birth and my social security. So we get a lot of questions on this as well. Should I add my social? Should I add my date of birth? If you've moved recently, if there's reason to believe the bureaus might have a difficult time finding you, then yes, I would handwrite this in there. Now listen, let me squash some dispute letter myth. It doesn't need to be in blue ink. It's perfectly fine that you handwrite this information in. When this dispute letter, and again, as I said in the very beginning of this video, we know a lot about what goes on inside dispute resolution in the processing centers because we've had people work there tell us exactly what they do. When your letter arrives at the credit bureaus, I'll just give you a real quick synopsis. There's a machine that opens up the letter. It unfolds the letter. This is really sophisticated stuff, by the way, and I haven't even gotten into the best part. Letter goes into a conveyor, okay, sucks it in, scans it, and this is all done by something called an OCR machine, massive OCR. It's an optical character reader, and it reads your credit report, and it understands it. Just like Credit Versio reads your credit report and understands what's there, the bureaus have software that reads your letter and understands what you're saying. And they do like clean letters. You know, that's why people got this notion like, oh, you got to handwrite your dispute letter. No, you don't. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. Both of the friends of mine that worked within dispute resolution have both told me the same thing. Don't handwrite letters, because what if your writing sucks like mine? I wouldn't want somebody to try to decipher what I'm trying to say. Software is going to read your letter first. Software might be the only thing that ever reads your letter. So what happens, so it's scanned by the OCR machine, the software understands what you're saying, it gives it a 3-digit code, and then it sends it digitally to the data furnisher to resolve. So a lot of this is done without anybody really looking at it, at least not that first dispute, probably not the second dispute either. When things get escalated, maybe somebody might actually read the letter. And by the way, just because somebody reads it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a better outcome. Software is incredibly sophisticated, and as long as you've got a concise dispute, and I'll go over it with you right here, it might be all that you need. Okay, so let's go to this letter. Hopefully you can read this. Hopefully your screen's big enough. Okay, so we're going down. There's the address. Dear Transunion, first line in the dispute, right out of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. I'm writing to dispute the following information that appears in my TransUnion report from October 1st, 2021. What's the key word? I'm writing to dispute. You have to do, I mean, they're still going to do an investigation if you don't write the word dispute, but this is right in the Fair Credit Reporting Act that you have the right to dispute. Okay, let's see. Let's read this one. So Capital One Auto. Now, as I said a minute ago, Credit Versio adds more information. Cap One Auto loan with the account number. Here's the number right here. The last couple numbers are hidden. Open date and the balance of this. So Credit Versio is taking data from the credit report to help the credit bureau's software understand what account this is. So right now, Credit Versio has given the credit bureau, in this case TransUnion's OCR software, an explanation of this account. It's a Cap One. It's an auto loan. Here's the account number. It was opened this date, and the balance is this. Okay, so Abigail VOH, not even sure. I don't know what that means. I don't know if you're trying to send me over something. Okay, so same thing. And by the way, I don't remember ever being late with a payment on this account. Okay, please provide statements and records of all payments made since I opened this account. Okay, great. That's a great dispute. It doesn't trail on. It doesn't say anything about, well, the law says this and you have to do that or do this or else. You don't need any of that stuff. One of the things that that really changed my perspective, and this is after I'd been in the business for probably 5-6 years, I don't know, 20, 30,000 disputes, who knows, or 20, 30,000 customers, who knows, hundreds of thousands of disputes, if not more. When we sat down with this gentleman, Steve, who used to run dispute processing at TransUnion, he said, do this. Eliminate all of your reference to the law. Don't include case law. Don't include anything. Just put in your dispute. That's it. And my partner at the time looked at each other and we're like, okay. I mean, that's completely contrary to what you learn in the credit repair space. You learn that you've got to have these robust and big letters. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that we had to make it look like to our clients like we were doing something. Like, wow, look at this letter. This letter is fantastic. No wonder I'm paying these guys, $100 a month, or, if it's paid on results, which is what we were $1,800, $2,000 to do my repair. Look, who could write a letter like this? This is a fantastic letter. So we tried it. We switched over, made letters. We didn't take out everything because we weren't totally, we didn't buy into it completely, but we removed a lot of it. And guess what happened to our deletion success rate? The same. Nothing changed. I'm telling you that story because I want to tell you another little interesting tidbit. The deletion success rate that we see with these very simple letters that Credit Versio produces is the same, if not better, than premium white glove credit repair companies. Okay, we have more data. I think probably Lexington Law Progression Group is most likely the only company in the country that has more result-driven data than we do, just because we have a tremendous amount of people using Credit Versio. And one of the things that we see is the deletion rate is really about the same. So what do we attribute to that? Number one is that simple disputes work better. We know that they do. We were told that they work better by people who work in the bureaus. Number two, the letters are coming from you. That's a big deal. You may not be aware of this, but inside the Fair Credit Reporting Act, there is a section. It's called Exception G. And Exception G essentially says, hey, if you get letters from a credit repair company, you don't have to do anything. You can legally ignore them. Now, the bureaus typically don't do that because they don't want, more of a hassle. But to a certain degree, it does have an effect. And I think that's one of the other reasons why the letters that come from Credit Versio have, in many cases, a much higher deletion percentage or success percentage than even the best credit repair companies. Okay, so back to the letter here. And we're finishing it up with, please reinvestigate these matters. That's a word right out of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Data furnishers are supposed to do an investigation prior to the insertion of data into the credit bureaus. Okay, let's see. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So let me close the preview. And then from here, I would go to my home page and I would mark the letter as sent, let Credit Versio know it's been sent. There we go. And that's it. And then from here, I would move on to Experian. Then I would move on to Equifax. And that's it. And that's as simple as it is. So one of the roles that I really like playing, and this is coming from a guy that has, I think, a pretty unique perspective in the industry, where I came into credit repair about a little over a decade ago as a client. Okay? I had really bad credit. I'm one of those guys that got completely clobbered during the Great Recession. A lot of real estate, a lot of debt, and credit repair was a magnificent thing for me. I was so intrigued by it that here I am about a decade later, and I'm still doing it. So, and I've seen it from both ends, from a really high end, one of the highest end white glove service providers in the country, really expensive, and seeing what they do as their vice president. And then coming to Credit Versio, where it's a free software platform. The only thing you're paying for is your monitoring service, Smart Credit, Identity IQ. We have others that are coming online, and that's it. So, well, how good can it be? Well, it turns out it's actually as good, if not better, than anything you're going to pay a monthly fee for or a paid on results company for. Okay, so that was the demo I wanted to go into. It's give you some explanation on the letter process. Please, if you have questions, shoot them out. I'm happy to answer them for you. Otherwise, what are we doing here? What kind of time we got? Wow, 40 minutes. Okay, coming up on 40 minutes. So I'll give you a second to put together a question or two if you don't have one. Or if you can't think of one at the moment, you can always add it a little bit later on. I get notifications anytime somebody posts a question on any of these lives, and I do my best to get to them usually the same day. All right, so that is it for my walkthrough of the Credit Versio platform. Make your now. If you're not using Credit Versio, that's perfectly fine. If you got a simple situation, you want to resolve it yourself. There's another myth that I want to dispel, which is well, you can't send the credit bureaus a template. Sure you can. the overwhelming, I wouldn't say, maybe overwhelming is not the right word, a large percentage of disputes that are sent by people are templates that come from the FTC's website or the CFPB's website. Okay, we know for a fact that a template dispute that you download, hey, if you need some help, if you've got a couple things to dispute, you don't know exactly what to say, you want to make sure you keep yourself on point, nothing wrong with going to the FTC website or the CFPB. Or another place you can go is if you bypass the part that has you connect a credit report provider to Credit Versio. Credit Versio's platform is free. You can go into the tutorial section. Oh, sorry, I forgot you're not looking at this. Okay, so here I am in the tutorial section, and here are the template letters right here. It'll take a second for that to open up because I haven't opened up this side in a few minutes. But you can go into Credit Versio's template area, and all the same letters are right there. Okay, now it's up. So credit bureau dispute, we have creditor dispute, validation request. This is for collection companies. A stop contact, identity theft guide. If you're going to claim identity theft, you can't just select the identity theft dispute reason and it's going to fly. You have to provide some documentation. A lawsuit guide, and if you have a missing credit bureau, say you get your 3 bureau credit report and one of them's missing, there's a letter there that you can send. So there's nothing at all wrong with template letters. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for joining me so much. Next week, I'm going to have John Alzheimer on with me. So we don't really talk about credit repair with John Alzheimer's on. We talk about credit improvement, how the bureaus work, how scores work, and he'll be with me next Wednesday. So if you get a chance, join me for that. It's always very interesting when we have John on. Okay, thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. And